don't we get started? We can go ahead and we need to just take care of one piece of business. So I want to welcome everyone to the spring 2023 Concept to Consumer Interest Group meeting here. Before we get started, we have one piece of business we need to take care of, and that is getting the minutes approved. Maria's had those up, and I believe they were distributed. These are the minutes as they were submitted to the board last November. So if I could get just one person to make a motion that they pass.
Motion.
Okay, and who was that?
It's a Perba, Tom.
Great. And then we just need to record that. And then if I could get someone to second that.
Second, John Crocker.
Thanks, John. Okay, good. So, guys, today we have an exciting panel lined up for you. It's going to be a discussion. This is a follow-up to the electronic color management roundtable that we had at the 2022 Textile Summit. We did a little bit of surveying, asking people what they would like to, topics they'd like to hear from Concept to Consumer. A lot of folks came back and said, hey, we just did not have enough time at the electronic color management roundtable last November. So what we've put together is this is a two-part series. This is going to be the first of two, and this is going to be hosted by Tim Williams from CSI DyStar, and he'll, in a few minutes, or a few seconds really, introduce his panel. And then the second part will be hosted by or moderated by Doug Bynum from the TIFIC, and he'll be representing his products or his solutions for color management there. Before Tim jumps in, just a couple of housekeeping type things. Keep in mind, this is your session. We've got a good group. We've got 27 online so far, and I'm sure they'll keep filtering in. So this is your session, and it's a chance for your questions to be heard, your opinions to be heard. If you have questions, comments, or opinions, please speak up. Make sure your mic is on. You can text using the chat, and you can also use the hand feature, the raise your hand feature in the Teams meeting here. Just as a reminder, the meeting is being recorded. So if you don't want to be part of the recording, what you can do is just turn off your camera. Very simple there, and just participate as part of the chat there. But because we will be sending out a link through the AATCC Connect communities for folks that were not able to make today's meeting. So having said just that short bit of housekeeping there, I'm going to turn it over to Tim and ask him if he'll please introduce his panel and himself as well as his panel there.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. First, can everybody see my screen okay?
You have
not yet.
Housekeeping right now. I think that's Maria's screen.
No, that's Tim, I think.
Oh.
Isn't it you, Tim? There you go.
Cool.
We see it, Tim. And you're muted, though.
You're muted.
Your mic, there you go.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just I got a single screen and it's giving me trouble. But anyway, thanks, Tom, for the introduction. And like Tom said, this is kind of a continuation of the Textile Summit presentation that we gave, and just a reminder of what we were talking about. So we were talking about color management in the textile supply chain, and how we've been saying, we're going fully digital for many, many years. And the question that we kind of posed was, is this a destination or a journey? And then are we there yet? Like the kid in the back seat, are we there yet? So just to to use the symbolism here, so we're following this herd, right? And we're going on a journey. There are people that are very far ahead in their journey to going fully digital. There are people that are leading the pack. There are people that are kind of wandering off to the left. There are people that are, waiting to see what everybody else does from behind. Some people are still in the river. But anyway, it's a journey, and there's a lot of people going in one direction. So we're just hoping that we can check in with the herd. Okay, and for this presentation, this is the herd. We tried to put together a group of people to represent different parts of the supply chain, the color approval supply chain. And I'm going to let each one of them kind of introduce themselves, and I'm just going to start with Karen McGhee.
Okay, so my name is Karen McGhee, and I lead the color department here at Walmart US, currently supporting apparel, home, hard lines. So basically everything that is sold in our stores except for grocery and consumables. And we have started on this journey of digital color about 3 years ago and are continuing to evolve. So I think it's definitely, I don't think we're there yet, but it's definitely been a journey over the past 3 years.
Okay, and then Larisa, can you introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. My name is Larisa Kriss, and I represent the company NYC Alliance. We're one of the major private label suppliers in apparel for Walmart and other private brands retailers. We are one of the leading company in sweater categories, as well as fashion knits, woven tops, bottoms, and dresses. We started this journey on electronic readings and electronic color approval, about 3 years ago. And me personally, I am the Director of Product Development and Compliance at NYC Alliance. And we are a fully vertical organization that makes it, I would say, easier and better for the market needs. I have 30 years of experience in the industry, so yeah, that's who we are and what we do, and I'm very excited for this. Really excited for this.
Thank you. And then Tony Kerperien from UL.
Tony Kerperien from UL Solutions. I'm the Color Lab Manager in Bentonville, Arkansas. We do the third-party product testing, consumer product testing, and my lab specifically is doing the color testing for Karen's process here. And so this journey's taken us from doing like 500 to 800 physical submits a day and transitioning more and more towards the e-color side.
Thank you. You also pronounce your name better than I do, Tony.
It's common. You got the common pronunciation.
And then we also have Kyle Saunders joining us, and I'll let him introduce himself.
I'm Kyle Saunders. I'm a senior color analyst for Fruit of the Loom. I've been with Fruit of the Loom for 11 years, all of which have been in the quality assurance area focused on color approvals. And one of my goals every year has been to kind of find opportunities and simplify and streamline our processes and kind of transformation to the worldwide digital color that we have today for Fruit of the Loom.
Okay, thanks a lot. So we've kind of been on this journey for a lot of years, but the global pandemic really increased the interest and the speed of adoption for digital color processes. Companies who were already using digital processes in color design and color management were definitely better positioned to handle the work from home or remote business situations. So this has been well identified as a driver, and it definitely sped things up for us in our journey. There's two big kind of categories for digital communication. So there are digital color communication needs, at design, and then also at color selection. And there's a burgeoning, a lot of energy going into that right now. But what we're going to focus our Q&A here today on is digital color approval. Okay, and just to separate digital from physical, physical color approval. So lots of brands and retailers have different processes, and by no means trying to relate the the process for everybody, but most of them have these basic elements. Someone or somebody, be it a PLM or an order, creates the demand for a colored fabric. Someone produces a color standard. Typically now it's physical and digital. There's still a lot of people that are cutting up fabric and sending those out for standards, but most everybody, I would say, now are using a color standard. Somebody produces a match to that standard and creates a physical submission, be it a lab dip or a bulk submit, shade band, a lot of different types of submits, but somebody creates a physical submit to be evaluated. And then those physical samples are mailed to a colorist for evaluation. Now this could be, the mill itself doing the evaluation, or it could be a regional or local office, or it could be coming to the headquarters of the specifier, like a brand or retailer. But somebody's going to look at that and make an evaluation. Someone reviews the results and makes a decision as far as moving ahead to the next step of production or a purchase, compared to the physical standard, and that's obviously done in a controlled light conditions, in a light box. Decisions are recorded and communicated. A lot of times it's done via email or in a shared document, or in even the best case, a shared server or a web-based system. Digital color approval, we seek to kind of streamline that process. Someone still creates the need or the demand for a colored fabric. More and more frequently, that's done just by a purchase order or via PLM.
Hey, Tim.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Can I interject one thing?
You may.
So I want to make clear that typically we tend to talk about fabric, but today I want to make sure that we're talking about colored product, because it's as important when we're talking about hard product as it is when we're talking about soft. So I think as we get into today's discussion, it's more about fabric it's more than just about fabric. It's about colored product.
Yep. I think that's a good point. So someone produces a color standard, and then again, that's physical and digital typically. Someone produces a match to that standard and creates a measurement of the fabric or the hard goods, as Karen pointed out. Someone reviews the results and confirms a decision based on that measurement. Decisions and data are recorded and communicated via, in the best case, a web-based system. That might also be a shared server type situation. I think Kyle may talk about that. Data is shared to improve the color matches in future decisions. So that information is shared out and hopefully used to improve the process for everybody. Okay, and then to get started on our panel, just want to ask the panelists, where are you in your company in the physical to digital process, and talk a little bit about where you've been, where you are right now, and then where you think you're going to go. And I'll start with Karen because she's on my screen.
Okay. So for those of you who haven't kind of heard, Walmart started their digital journey in the early 2000s. We were implementing an electronic color process during those years. And at the time, Walmart went through some other transformations, and the digital color process kind of got put on hold until COVID came around about 3 years ago. And it was at that time that we elected to really ramp it up and basically implement it all at once. So we are definitely still on a journey here, but from a product perspective, we are running at about 98% fully impacted on the apparel side digitally. On the home side, we're running probably about 50-50 because we still are not doing prints digitally in home, but we are doing those in apparel. And then we're starting to bring our hardlines suppliers on our hardlines departments on board. So we do hard product already currently for home, which is a whole nother journey, learning the ins and outs of creating plastics and woods and metals and painting and those types of things. Everything is another nuance into the process. So it's definitely, we're still on a very long journey. But we are going in with both feet in, I think for various reasons, but we've definitely seen the impact from a customer perspective or a customer execution perspective. So color consistency, timing and cost. And I think, our third-party lab partner can speak to this, and especially our suppliers who have really started to see the impacts of how this digital process has improved their business. So if Tony or Kyle or Larissa want to take over.
Yeah, we've definitely seen a huge impact. The electronic before COVID was maybe we'd get 60 or so a day, and those were QTX files emailed in. And even with that few is easy, with multiple people kind of reaching into that inbox and grabbing them out, it was easy to like lose one or misfile one very easily. So having that single platform where it gets uploaded and it shows as pending and it's visible to everyone that it still needs to be done has been a big help. And getting the physical submits, the quantity of those down helps a great deal with time. Time is money, and with storage, just trying to store all those samples is a big concern. So the more we go towards digital, the better for us.
Hello, everybody. Again, I can just jump in here as being one of the suppliers and representing the supplier world. Well, we all know that, as human, we all shy away from changes. And of course, at the beginning, it was like a shocker. And I would ask my teams, my partners in overseas, and would ask me, what does that mean that you're physically not going to see the color? And of course, at the beginning, it was like a little bit of a shock of how is it possible. Well, down the line, and today, like almost full 3 years into it, let me tell you something. I don't remember the last time we had to ask for an extension, and I'm talking about a significant quantity programs. I don't remember the last time we had in-store situation for color not matching. I don't remember the last time we had situation where my related separates come from completely two different fabrications would not match each other. The timing is mine. Tony said it absolutely perfectly. So let me just give you the timeline for the physical submit to get a swatch to get lab tips from overseas. In today's environment, it takes anywhere from 4 to 5 days. For us to review it internally, just to get the package, receive the package, review the lab tips, and send them out to UL for evaluation would take another 1 or 2 days. Then it would take UL to evaluate the product another 2 days. So altogether, we're looking at anywhere between 9 to 14 days for the time of lab tip evaluation. And electronic submission of the lab tip, where we have it set up overseas. So, and we know the time difference. So once we go to sleep, they reading them, they sending them out. By the time I come into the office, we get the readings and we get the passing or failing results. So literally it takes a day for us to get the lab tip approval or shade band approval, or and in terms of color evaluation, as many of you know, that private label and some colors are being a little bit more difficult than others. We have some issues sometimes when we have no choice but to ask for color review. So my color review on electronic color review, my fastest one is 1 hour, and my longest one is within 1 day. I got 2 colors reviews last week, and they were like literally within an hour. And I was like, I made that wow thing like out loud. And if you're asking for a physical review, I would say it would take anywhere from 3 to 4 business days, because the physical submits need to travel from one facility to another, and it just takes a little bit longer. So I would say that money saving, and a tremendous money saving, because you don't send any physical packages. You save on that, and time. And we all know that time is money.
Thanks. Then Kyle.
Fruit of the Loom's really historically been electronically driven for over 10 years. You know, the sheer volume that we go through, it would be near impossible without electronics. You know, I began under the Russell Athletic brand, and, you know, in athletic apparel, it's essential for colors to match, you know, different trims and multiple light sources, you know, and, you know, checking metamerism and stuff like that. There's a lot of big factors and approvals that, you know, the electronic data can really easily and accurately help you with. You know, and currently we have immediate access to all of our internal manufacturing across the world, but also, you know, we've got offices in Hong Kong, and, you know, we can see all of our turnkey stuff that they're doing, you know, all in one place with immediate access. So at any point we can review a color, we can see its performance and any issues that need to be addressed, and really focus on consistency, you know, for the brand image. And recently, we've even begun digitally matching our threads. We can take our sample roll fabrics as they're done and get to us. We can take a reading of the sample roll, and it'll actually give us a list of our closest threads that our thread supplier has. And, you know, that's been a huge time savings. They can ask us what our closest thread would be in the sample department, and they can, you know, move on down the road, and we can get that information to them a whole lot quicker. Digital approvals, you know, I think soon it's going to be normal for the aspects of all color, you know, with the advanced technology for evaluating prints and laces and trims and everything. It's there's instruments out there with, you know, really high accuracy. I think there's going to be, you know, even more of a shift in normal color processes industry-wide for digital color.
That's good. Thanks, Kyle. Okay. So I think everybody's kind of touched on a few of these, but what were some of the major hurdles you've had to overcome when moving to a more digital workflow? And I'm going to call Tony out on this one, because I know, having went through this with him, it was very transformative to your internal systems and that kind of thing. Do you have any comments?
Major hurdles to overcome. Yeah, so for years, it's just learning something new. For a lot of our people, for years and years, is all physical color testing, and whenever we're using more and more digital to look at different stages of the process, you know, whether something should pass or fail, getting everybody on board with understanding what those numbers mean, because not everybody has access to the charts. I know some people can look at the graphical charts and understand it better than the numbers. So yeah, just trying to get everybody on board with what everything means, and understanding how those numbers and those charts can be impacted by the different materials. That's probably our biggest challenge from a testing standpoint.
Yeah. It's not easy moving people from trusting their eyes to trusting the numbers that they see on the screen, right?
Exactly.
Larisa or Kyle, your companies are both a vendor for Walmart, but they're also brand owners and brand managers and that kind of thing. How have things changed in your organizations along your digital journey?
Well, for
I
us,
could say, go ahead.
okay, you go ahead.
One of the main things, is to kick off with some of the struggles was the accreditation and travel restrictions. And, during COVID, we had no choice but to really rely heavily on digital data. It was kind of at that time we realized that we not only could rely on it, but we had to, a whole lot more than we previously ever have. And sorry, it's not just to confirm, the physical approvals like we had previously, but to actually make the approvals digitally. And we really learned that we could make accurate decisions with confidence based on the electronic data. And we've really been able to continue a lot of these practices post-COVID, such as electronic lab dip approvals, and then we'll kind of get a follow-up physical afterwards. It can, kind of like Larisa was talking about the 10 to 14 day window. We can have the digital approval and be moving on, and then we'll get the physical later on. So that's been a big help for us. You really get a competitive advantage when you can take 2 weeks out of a lead time anywhere in the process. So.
Yeah. You mentioned getting the physical. Do you foresee a time when you'll just drop that?
I do, and we have actually discussed that. And there are instances where we have already implemented that with some suppliers.
Yeah.
Based on either pass-through rate and volume, supplier performance, but we have moved to some of that already.
Yep. Then Larisa.
Well, in my world, it's a little bit different because we have a lot of fashion item and a lot of fashion pieces where we have trims that are dyed to match, and some of them with today's software are readable and some are not. So I can completely walk away from the physical submits, but I do have to say that with newer, I should say, process of the print approval electronically, and a lot of my fabrications are could be anywhere from chiffon to crepe, where the lining is the solid color and lining gets approved by suppliers. So for those that don't have any trims and like sell fabric, what I do is I basically have my China partners or my overseas partners read the lining lab dips electronically and submit it for my evaluation, and I obviously review them and approve them, or I trust them to review them and approve them. In terms of when we became and how we implemented this very successful processes, we have our own brands as 5 to 5, Juicy Couture, Fry, Tree Torn, Sugar Moon, plus others. We saw the success that we had with Walmart private label. And we saw that, and again, us being fully vertical and having completely open conversation with our overseas partners, we saw the success and the time saving that we've had with Walmart private label. So we implemented a lot of electronic color approvals for specific items, especially for related separates group, where you have 3 or 4 different fabrication with different finishing, and yet they are either the same color cast or the same color standard. So we definitely do that electronic reading overseas in our color lab, and we see huge success in color matching and timing.
Very good. And then Karen, do you have anything you want to throw in?
Well, I think, from a retailer's perspective, one of the biggest challenges was just getting the supply chain and the suppliers themselves and the factories to trust in the process. you know, the beginning part of it was, well, how can you make this decision? And what if you make this decision and then you get the physical swatch and it looks a little bit different because of some sort of finishing technique or whatever the case is, and then you say no. And I think the big part there is to really build that trust with the suppliers and getting the dye houses the visibility to the data so that they have a better understanding of, you know, if it's not right, how to fix it, and really building that trust relationship. I think that was probably one of the more difficult things to kind of overcome. And the most often question that we got was really based around trust. And I think, Larisa, if you might want to just, you know, I think you could probably verify that, you know, especially as we're talking about fashion items, there were so many things that the suppliers just were very reluctant because there really hadn't been that trust between Walmart and the supply chain in previous years.
Absolutely. You 100% true and 100% aligned. And that's what I mentioned in, before, guys. It's all about trusting the process. And I do have to say, Karen, that it's the putting the process in place the way you did it is completely different to because like I mentioned, we do, and I'm not going to mention anybody else, names of other retailers, but we do enormous amount of private label. And some other retailers, they do have this process in place, but they have it at a quarter way or halfway done in terms of the process itself not being put together and not being thoughtfully put together the way how we have it here in this case of Walmart. And having that process put in place, I guarantee you will save you lots of time, lots of production time, and lots of money, and aggravation as well. You'll be pleasantly surprised once you align with the proper electronic color approval process on fashion items, on sweaters, on acrylic and cotton yarn mixed together, on bouclés, sweater itself. How do you read yarns? Well, we have a process to read yarns, and it works. How do you read prints? We have a process of how to read prints, and it works. It does work. And if you go on the floor and you see the same print in different categories done by different suppliers, you'll be pleasantly surprised to see how well the print matches through different fabrications in different categories done by different suppliers.
It's good to hear. Okay, anybody else before we move on? Okay, our questions overlap a little bit, but some of the hurdles in the previous question were probably instructional for people that are facing that now or have gone through that. But starting with Karen, what would be instructional for other people as they implement a digital color workflow?
I think, you know, the biggest thing is to trust in yourself and trust in your process, and you really provide that faith and visibility. For us, I think one of the biggest strong points of our process is sharing the information with suppliers and dye houses so that everybody is seeing the same thing. And for anybody who may work either as a mill supplying to a retailer or works as a supplier to a retailer or is a retailer themselves, when we're hoarding data or we're giving comments either through ourselves or through, such as us, our third party lab, and you're providing a comment to a dye house, especially who is most likely in a foreign country, and the comment is, well, this is moderately yellow. And as a former dyer, I would say that's great. That's great. But what do you want me to do with it? I can take it in 100 different directions from yellow. And I think really helping to share the information of what you're doing as a business as a total is a big challenge to overcome, but in doing so, it will help your end product for you and your customer. And I think that's the biggest thing is trusting in yourself and helping to share the data that you own so that everybody can benefit and move forward in a faster way.
You're good. Anybody else have any advice?
Yeah, one key thing I would add to it is learn your software. You know, I've used Xrite and Data Color both extensively, and once you learn some of the features that they offer, you know, that they do some fantastic things that you can use to your advantage. Both companies, I believe, offer training and some advanced training to their software, and I've found them to be very beneficial.
Yeah, I
I don't-
second that.
And just so you know, these trainings are available overseas as well in the native language and a lot of countries as well. So I do recommend getting your partners on board overseas and get them trained, because it does work and makes a huge difference. And it's definitely, and also what I suggest as a supplier, be vocal and list your concerns, and don't be afraid to work with your partner on a retailer part, and build that relationship that together you can create a very good process that will bring you a lot of success, because success is definitely there.
Also, a plug for AATCC Color Management Workshop too. I think that would be very beneficial for a lot of people. Also, I just came to mind when we were talking about pushback and that kind of thing. I remember early in the Walmart process, and then for other brands and retailers, we sometimes hear, you know, either our product is not measurable, or our supply chain can only do visual. They don't have spectrophotometers. Did you find that to be always true? I guess it goes back to the trust thing too.
Yeah, I think definitely, you know, we hear that a lot. And, you know, for anybody who knows anything about Walmart or they've read Mr. Sam's book, one of his famous statements is swim upstream. And I think, you know, when you're on the journey of digital color, is you truly have to swim upstream. Today we are doing more product, whether it's through fabrication or through print pattern, that as an industry we may have been led to believe really isn't possible, or it's so expensive and not really repeatable that we probably shouldn't do it. And we have continued to push forward and truly swim upstream, and we have found success. I mean, there's a couple of places where we still haven't conquered it, but as a company and as a industry, we have really, I think, swam upstream, and hopefully are leading the way for others to come behind us and feel the success or benefit from the success of how we've been able to move forward. Though oftentimes, well, this can't be read, or we're not getting repeatable readings. You know, notably mesh, velours, corduroys, you know, a whole multitude of products that suppliers always feel that they're not gonna get repeatable readings. So I think it's important.
Then, Karen, while you're on here too, you touched on this a little while ago. You actually said data hoarding, but this is what I'm calling the rise of decision sharing. And a couple of things we learned along the journey was actually Walmart's idea to provide this this idea of sharing the history of color approvals. And this is just a 3D graph of it or whatever, but the suppliers can log into ColorFlow, and they can look at this, and they can kind of see where approvals have been rejected, approved, things let go, and that kind of thing. And this helps people who are actually dyeing the fabric look at it and help make that decision rather than just waiting for an acceptance, rejection, that kind of thing. And then the other thing that Walmart suggested was this QC color area, and it was to help vendors and mills work together on collaborating and kind of pre-submitting colors, and we called it a shame-free sandbox. So it's a place to play, work on color before it's ever sent for approval to UL or before Walmart ever sees it, and they're able to, once they kind of get something they like, they can then allow Walmart and UL to see it. But conceptually, it's the same idea for color history and for QC color. It's just trying to empower the supply chain to help make that decision rather than just submitting and either getting a pass or fail. Does anybody want to comment on those?
Hey, Tim.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Sorry, Karen. I just wanted to comment, everyone that's in the audience, if you have questions or if you have comments, please feel free to either just speak up, use the raise your hand, or type it into the chat section, because this is live and we're welcome to take questions as we're moving along here.
And if somebody would just notify me, because I may not be able to see it.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Karen.
Thanks. Sorry, thanks.
Actually, Tim, I was just going to reiterate exactly what you said. And I think this was another big focus when we really implemented this process. And, perhaps because I am a former dyer, I felt very, very strongly that in order for us to improve, we really had to provide information and communication, not only to our suppliers, who oftentimes may not know really anything about dyeing, is to get them the information that they need and can see very easily on how they need to correct, or if they're just starting from the beginning, where do I need to really, how do I need to match this color? Because providing an accurate standard is only the first step in the hurdle process of getting a color approved. Because if, as a retailer, once I start getting submits in, and if I have coordinate programs across 6 or 7 different suppliers across 10 fabrications, and the first guy comes in and I approve a submit, but he gets approved on the blue side, well, I'm certainly not going to start approving others on the yellow side, even though they might look somewhat close to the color standard. Along with what's already been approved, they look very different. And that's very hard to communicate unless you're sending fabric swatches across all around the world to all these different suppliers and wait, don't match this, now you need to match this. I think it was really important for us to help provide that information. So again, it's all about timing and accuracy, and ultimately at the end of the day, it's about consistency for the customer being able to go in and create those outfits and build the basket and build her wardrobe that she feels good about. But in order to do that, we really had to provide this type of information. And I can't speak for other retailers, but for us, and Larissa's on here and Kyle's on here, a lot of times they were afraid to send something in, but they wanted to take advantage of the process with their mills without, really having visibility. But in the beginning, there really wasn't a way to do that. So creating that shame-free space was a way for us to allow them to take advantage of the digital processes that we had put in place without any visibility. So they felt more free to actually utilize the tools and really work to improve without having to send all these physical swatches even between themselves. So again, providing those tools so that we're all taking advantage of the digital, we're all saving time, we're all saving money, and helping the environment in the process.
Anybody else want to comment on the idea of data sharing, decision sharing?
It's certainly easier to explain why something failed with the charts like this one here. which I am ashamed to say I realized that was Blue Cove before you moved to the other slide because I submitted too much. But
It is Blue
that-
Cove.
it's like I touched on this earlier. Not everybody understands those numbers. So like when you look at the DE and the DL, well, you know, those of us who are in it all the time, I can look at those numbers and see the chart in my head. But your average person cannot. So being able to really see where you're plotting out compared to everybody, you know, almost even before you submit, like on this QC side, you can see it before actually submitting for testing. So really a benefit to them for understanding. Yeah.
Hey, Tim.
Yeah.
A question just came in that goes right along with this topic. So this question's from Mohammed. What matrix do you use for color approval? Is it DL, DC, DE, CMC, or do you look for reflectance curves too? Or is it a combination of both? So they were really asking, okay, what kind of data are you seeing that's being when you receive a submit?
I'll probably let Tony or Karen answer that for us, at least for the Walmart supply chain.
Retailer has a delta E tolerance set that's used more for lab dips trying to stay within that delta E. For shade bands, the delta E is used, but only to the extent, or only to a certain extent, because you know you can have a delta E that could be the same value but be on different sides of the standard. So for shade bands, we're really looking at clustering. Once the initial shade bands are approved, the subsequent shade bands need to cluster together well on that same chart. So that's the primary criteria.
Delta E CMC is the tolerance for Walmart.
The CMC, yeah, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Right now, there's no. Wait, another question just came in actually.
Okay.
And it really goes more with this color history. Have any of you worked with predefined hue quadrants for the mill to stay in, or has it worked in production? So they're really asking. I think, Tony, it goes back to kind of what you were saying. Are you requiring a hue quadrant for lab dips or just a DE? And then as far as bulk, are you requiring a quadrant or just DE? But I think you sort of answered that with you're looking for clusters. But I want you to answer it. I'm sorry, I'm sort of jumping into that.
Well, so Tom, I'll take that. So from a lab dip
Okay.
perspective, we are looking for a DE CMC, but when we get to the shade bands, we're looking for clustering. So it's kind of both. We do not quadrant or hue cluster initially out to a mill. So we have that tolerance that we live by for the lab dip and the first shade band. Once a shade band is approved, we live more in a clustering realm.
And that's true for coordinating fabrics and that kind of
Yes.
thing too. It's kind of handled the same way. And I would probably say there's less need to specify a quadrant to start with when you can kind of see where you need to be, if that makes sense.
For the Loom, we actually establish a color quadrant before we even distribute standards out to the supply chain. And, we always say it's not really a rigid boundary. And, initially we had quite a lot of pushback when we started that. But it's really been a great tool for consistency, for so many different trims and fabrics coming in, between different styles, and, just product to product, the consistency greatly improved. And we really, are really basing approvals based on our standard tolerance. But if everybody's kind of shooting the same direction to start with, it really improves the final product.
Okay. And let's see, we had another question come in. Reading a non-flat sample can be challenged. Also, correlation of instruments versus visual for a glossy or texture sample. How do you handle this?
So, for sheen, so we've started reading sheen, and what we ask is that the suppliers do not rotate them, and do not move them. So once the sample is placed on the spectrophotometer, we ask that it stay there for the remainder of the readings. And Tony, if we of course we exclude UV, and I think there's a couple other factors in there of our settings that help to eliminate shine and coatings on fabric.
Yeah, it depends on the degree of the shine. We're still not measuring like dazzle, the really highly reflective items, but for some of those textured fabrics like the velour and such, yeah, we're doing the non-rotation between the measurements, and all nap has to be the same way for every measurement.
I think that kind of goes back to what Marissa was saying earlier about there are very specific processes for different fabrics and prints versus solids. And I think that that's one thing that you've done very well at Walmart is to document all the different processes and substrates, things that are measurable, not measurable. If they are measurable, how you actually should take that reading. And last question that's up there is they're just asking, what is the tolerance that you're using at Walmart for Delta E CMC? And then they said, is it 0.08?
So we don't share our tolerances with the broader group, but we do have a tolerance that is set, and it is a fairly tight tolerance.
Yeah. I think it's a fair answer. I think really each brand has to do some testing to see what tolerance fits their organization.
Yeah, and I will put in this caveat that while we do have a tolerance, not everything fits within that tolerance. And that comes with trust, right? So if, if the tolerance is set at 1.5, I'm just going to say if it's set at 1.5, but you're doing corduroys, or you're doing velvets or velours or terry cloth towels, you could see tolerances in the 8, 9, 10 range, and you have to truly understand how does that fabric react, and what does that nap do to something, and how does that going to relate and translate into numbers, and have that trust again, and some of that is a trial and error. So even though you have tolerances set, not everything that you're going to do is going to fall within those tolerances. And similarly, if we have shears and chiffons that we are doing electronically, those numbers are also likely not going to fall within your tolerance because of the pure sheerness of it. So again, it's about understanding what your fabrics and how they're going to react, and how does that translate into numbers.
It actually brings up a pretty good transition into the next question, because you have to do a lot of that interpretation that you were talking about with digital print approval as well. So I'm going to jump into that next question. So where are we going with digital print approval? When we did the presentation at the last summit, it was something that was fairly new. And so I just wanted to start with asking, how's it going, Karen? And what's working and what is not working?
So for us, digital color is working very well. So the last time we gave this presentation, we had just launched it. It was pretty painful during the launch. I think Tony can share in that sentiment, and Tim could share in that sentiment, because we did launch it like we've done everything else. We just went all in with both feet. And of course, not everything is going to work perfect when you just launch it. I think it took us 2 to 3 months to really work out the kinks. And I would say today, digital or print digital color is as successful or more successful even than solid, or at least as much as solid. Our suppliers were very thrilled with the amount of consistency, and Larissa hit on this a little bit. She does supply to our ladies department, and we do have a lot of print sharing across a lot of suppliers, and that means that many or more mills that are participating in those same prints, and we have found great success. We are getting better and more consistency across patterns and across fabrics than we ever did when stuff was submitted physically. And so for that, we've found it to be a great, and honestly, I'm struggling right now. I don't know anything in print that's really not working. The only time we find something that's not working is when a supplier send something in electronically, whether they've read the standard instead of actually trying to match the color. We run into that occasionally. I mean, there's always ways around the process, but for the most part, it's been very successful, and we're going to continue to roll this out across our business units.
Then it'd be interesting to hear from Larissa because she does a good bit of prints.
Yes, well, as Karen had mentioned, and as I had mentioned before, we do various prints, and what's the most important of being a supplier as information that you send along with reading. It is absolutely important to include the fabrication and your application form that gives visibility to color team in UL and Walmart to understand where is this electronic reading comes from and what fabrication is being printed on. I think this is critical and very important. We had some hiccups in the beginning, but we were able to figure it out. And like I said, I do not recall of my strike-offs not being approved on the first shot. And like Karen has an amazing process in place, and if something revises, something changes, we are being notified prior of our print submission. I mean, I'm not going to go into details because it's Walmart private details, but we nailed it. I think that, and again, it's because we learned the process based on the solid lab dips. It was, I should say, it was more adaptable. I wouldn't say easier because the process was challenging in the beginning, but it was a lot more adaptable because we started off with solid and then we moved into prints. But again, in one day you get an approval on the print, and the next day you can start your production on your fabric. I mean, you can beat that.
Then Kyle or Tony, anything to add?
I do not currently for the Loom. We are not digital for prints, but we are looking into it.
The buy-in was sluggish in the beginning. I would not consider our pilots for print the most successful, but the expectations were set. And so for the folks who have struggled with it, it's more been not embracing what it can be and just looking at it from a, well, this can't be done standpoint. And it can be done. You just got to be willing to understand the expectation and push towards that. I think the testing's going well. I mean, I'm with Karen. I can't think of anything that's really giving us a lot of trouble there, other than sometimes folks just, it is more complicated than sending the solids. Sometimes they just don't understand, or they'll mismeasure, mix up colors in their own print, and of course that'll throw the readings off. But mainstream, I can't think of anything major that's causing issue.
I think to be able to see the consistency on the floor, and I was, in Florida a few 2 weeks ago exact, and to see the consistency on the floor of, let's say, our print and somebody else's print in a different fabrication, and like I said, done by a completely different supplier, and see how well it matched between each other. This is the answer by itself and the success of the process.
Then we touched a little bit on this when we were just talking about how to handle pile fabrics and things that, aren't as easily measurable. But this was, I think, part of the success was just trying to convince everybody that they didn't have to measure the print itself, because with prints, the color decision is not just the actual, reflectance of the color itself. It's the effect of surround and things like that, and the effect of, print method. So I think gathering all the information you can, Larisa mentioned it too, having the artwork there, having, all the information that a person needs to make the decision surrounding color was key. And this image, I don't know how well it shows, but so these are two different methods that are being used to basically create what is actually measured. So this is taking two of the inks from the screens and doing what we call a drawdown on a K-coder type machine or a screen print in the lab, and then making measurements of those and then correlating that back. And I think it gets back to trust, like you were talking about, and understanding what's being made as opposed to just living and dying by the numbers. Does anybody have any observations or input on that? How it's been to use this?
Well, I'm gonna just, from our perspective, we found this to be the most effective and cost-effective method for the suppliers, because for us, this method can be done no matter how that you're printing, no matter what fabric you're printing on. And for us, the proof is in the pudding. We're working on our third full season utilizing this process, and we've seen great success in the product. Our fabrications can range in a given season from anything from an open hole mesh or a sheer fabric all the way up to a Sherpa sharing the same print. And we continue to see consistency using this method. I saw a question pop up about data color SpectraVision and whether or not we have utilized that. And personally, as Walmart, we have not we've elected to do digital prints in this method as opposed to utilizing some of those other systems that are out there, and it's been very successful for us.
And Larisa, how was this to convince your mills to change the way they were doing things with the print process?
Well, for us, it was, I don't think it was so difficult for us because we're a fully vertical organization. So for us, it was, this is what it is, and we have to get it done right. So we reacted to it. We were not against it. And I would say we did have, and we did have some bumps. And, Karen and Tony both are, my witness to those bumps. And there were a lot of times that they were annoyed with me because I'm the messenger and my team is the messenger and having all the questions and all the answers. And again, we had a lot of patience to set up our team overseas because in my opinion, it is more critical for overseas to be set up in the right path. So once we had patient, Karen and Tony had patient, and we had patients, and we did have a lot of training overseas in their native language for them to get on board with it. And today we have situations where, and again, it's mostly in sweaters where the colors are being selected by Walmart product development and buying team as SAS. So even though we don't have the colors, we don't have QTX files for those colors, we submit our own color QTX file for them to be set as standard because we want to do color approval electronically. It is better for us, better for consumer, better for our timing, better for our production timing to have the colors done electronically. That's how we can easily do the physical SAS process, but we rather set it up as NYC Alliance oatmeal. I'm just throwing it as an example, and have that live and color flow and submit our lab dip and shade against that color standard. Because we know that our product will come out more consistent. Our approval process will be much shorter, and we're going to save a lot of money.
Very good. Okay, just a few more things, and I'm gonna just open it up for more questions. But a few things that we kind of figured out along the journey. You still need strong visual color evaluation practices. Just because you move most of the decision making to digital doesn't mean that you don't have to look at your product. The customer will eventually QC it for you if you don't. There's an increased need for accreditation and also validation of results when you go digital. So building both education and then also trust and verification in the supply chain is important if you're going to communicate digitally. There's an urgent need for more color management education, especially at the vendor level. So Larisa and Fruit obviously are at a high level, but I think that's the more people, the closer we get to the people that are actually having to make the decisions and carry the color management burden, those are the people that need the most knowledge. Part of color communication is speaking the same color language. So even if that language is in numbers, not everyone understands that. And several of the speakers mentioned that as being a roadblock and a hurdle at times. And as much as we like to analyze color data and, scorecard our suppliers and that kind of thing, we have to build systems and processes that make our job more easy. So it's not just about big data and analyzing all the numbers and getting fixated on a tolerance, that kind of thing. Okay, any more questions from anyone else? Or anything else the panel thought of too?
Tim, there is another question. Audra, if you wouldn't mind, just unmute your mic and ask the question directly.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, put you on the spot,
me?
didn't I?
Yeah.
Okay.
So obviously, I'm not going to turn my camera on, sorry. But just managing color with piece goods and understanding that printing is going on the surface of the product or the fabric. PFP, depending on country of production, depending on the fabric and the piece goods that it's created by, how are you defining either whiteness or even just guardrails to minimize a lot of back and forth? Otherwise, it just becomes more of a visual backed by digital. Or are you still building that? And that's perfectly fine to answer that way too.
Right. So we actually don't specify one way or the other. And we personally have not seen any impact. Now, again, it's about trusting, what we're getting, and without getting into all the details of our process, because we do have ways to look at product without actually getting product and so on and so forth. We have not experienced any issues, and that did come up a couple of times in the very beginning from suppliers who were using PFD fabrics, and what about this and what about that? And we literally we had to trust and say, look, we need you to move forward, submit your stuff. I will say, in part of our process for prints, when we initially launched it, we actually launched it sooner than expected due to some industry situations. We did require that the suppliers, and do require that the suppliers submit to us a sample once we've approved digitally, just so that we can confirm that everything we did was accurate. And in those cases, we could catch if something was an issue. And to date, a year in, we haven't found any issues where we've approved something digitally, that once we received it physically, that it was out of whack because of some sort of PFD or whiteness issue. And everybody does things differently. We can have the same prints where some of the product is on PFD and others where it's just basically on a mesh or chiffon or whatever the case is. And again, it just comes down to trusting the suppliers and trusting the numbers, or understanding the process. So again, it's not about the numbers align exactly every time, but it's understanding the fabrication and the numbers with the fabrication and how does that relate, which it's a learning process for everybody.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Karen. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Audra. Okay. One other question from the audience was, we were talking about using Delta E CMC. Has anyone looked at or considered using DE 2000?
We have.
Yeah, I think I can actually answer that for you, because just being in the apparel industry, DE 2000 just is not the default tolerancing system that we've used in textiles for so long. I know that in textile, in automotive and paint and different industries, DE 2000 is very common and is working well. But I think there's so much legacy work, and DE CMC has worked so well that I don't think it's really just been studied that much for textiles. Tim, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the only thing I would add, we talked about this in a roundtable, I think 2 summits ago with Carol Revels and some other folks. And the biggest issue is, yes, there's some better agreement on things like Navy. The Navies measure better and they agree more with what we see, but there wasn't like a lot of difference. And so everybody was kind of like you're saying, going through okay, am I prepared to redo everything or to start anew, just to get a little bit better blue measurement or Navy. And so I think that the topic, we keep dropping the topic as an industry because everybody's kind of like, is it worth the effort or not?
Yeah. I think you look at some companies like Fruit that have been doing some traditional colors for a very long time, and now all of a sudden you're resetting your tolerance, and it can create an issue with your supply chain. So that, just from things I've heard, that seems to be the reason that we haven't seen a lot of work for DE 2000 for apparel and textiles. Anyone else from the audience that would like to either send in a chat or have a question or?
Anyone else on the panel have anything that just want to share that we might have missed?
Tim, I'll just say that, listening to the panel, and I've heard you guys, I was at the 2022 summit. One thing that sort of stuck out to me is that for Walmart, you did not start trying to do everything in the beginning, that you've really been through a big building process, and you started with solids and you've added, as Fruit said, they're now looking at doing threads, and now you're doing prints. And I think that that's probably a great approach for anyone that's considering going digital, is to look at the areas that you can start with without a lot of difficulty and just sort of reap the benefits of that, and then continue to build your program. And watching from the sideline on Walmart, that seems to be one of your successes, that you didn't try to grab and do everything at one time. You have really been building your process for now over 3 years, and from what I understand, you have quite a few other processes that you want to eventually add to it.
That makes me feel better, Tom, because I felt like we just jumped in like head first. But yes, that's true. I mean, we definitely did, you know, take a category, take a type and move forward. We moved faster maybe than some, but for us it was successful and it was necessary. So, you know, we will continue to move forward and Tim says I am the queen of creeper. I'm the queen of creeper featuring.
Feature creeping.
But it is all done and actually with good intention to, you know, and for those of you who are on the call that are with working for retailers and are looking at this process, you know, we highly encourage you to do what you can to move in this direction, because I think the more of us that are moving in this direction, the better compliance we get across the industry and the more growth we get as an industry. And so, you know, we're happy to, that's why we continue to share in hopes that, you know, others can feel more comfortable with the adoption of going digital with their processes as well.
Wonderful. Okay. So it sounds like there are no more questions in the chat. It sounds like we're sort of wrapping up. Tim, all of you guys, I want to say thank you. Again, this was a request from members of C2C that they would like to see more on digital color management. And you know, just want to remind everyone that part 2 of this series will be in November during the November meetings. During the regular scheduled C2C group. My watch suddenly gave me a message. Sorry about that. So yeah, the part 2 of this will be during the regular scheduled C2C meeting in November. So it'll be a different process, a different supplier for digital color solutions. So hopefully everyone will join us back then.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom, and thanks, AATCC. Thank you to all my herd, my panelists. We appreciate it.
That's good. Okay, Maria, I think we will officially close the meeting. I think we may need a traditionally when we're doing a traditional agenda, we get a motion to close. So somebody will throw that out. We'll just at least be official and can put that into the minutes.
Motion to close.
Motion to close. Okay. All right, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.